Welcome to the Sermon in the Valley with Pastor Rob Eller. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast on any of those platforms and share it with your friends and family. Thank you. Welcome back to the Sermon in the Valley, everybody. Pastor Rob Eller here with your Thursday episode. So this has been on my mind quite a bit lately. Here at my church, we have this monthly gathering called Pub Theology. We have a small group that meets at a local restaurant where we have food, drinks, and just open conversation about pretty much anything involving faith. And this past month, we had a discussion about the devil, about Satan and who he is and what the biblical basis for the devil is and how we interpret the devil in our current lives. It was a really good discussion. Brought out a lot of good side discussions, and I wanted to share a lot of what we talked about today, because I feel it's important to know what the Bible really says about Satan. Which, you'd be surprised, is really not a whole lot. So starting at the very beginning, the creation story in Genesis, we have Adam and Eve in the garden, the first temptation with the snake telling Eve to take the fruit from the forbidden tree. And in many cases, we interpret that snake as being the devil. However, there's no scriptural basis for that. That interpretation came centuries later. In fact, there's really no reference to the devil in the Old Testament. One of the common names we have for the devil, Satan, comes from the Hebrew word Satan, which means accuser, or like the prosecutor. And it's just a word. It's not a name, it's just a word. And it's someone who, and it's the idea is the Satan is someone who tests another person. And it's used as a formal noun a few times as Ha-Satan. One of the most prevalent parts of Ha-Satan in the Old Testament is in the book of Job. For those of you who aren't familiar with Job, the basic gist of it is Job is a righteous man, has done no wrong, but he's being tested. His kids are killed. He loses his crops, he loses his house, he loses everything, all as a test to see how faithful he is to God. And who does this test? None other than Ha-Satan. And it starts out in the beginning of the book. There is the gathering of heavenly beings. God is above all the heavenly beings. And Ha-Satan comes. God asks, what have you been up to? And Ha-Satan says, I've been walking across the earth looking for people to test. And God says, well, what about Job? No, he is righteous. He is a good man. Why don't you test him? See how strong his faith is. So Ha-Satan goes down and tests him, takes away his house, his farm, his kids, all to see if you remain faithful to God. Other instances of Ha-Satan are in the book of Chronicles. First Chronicles, Second Chronicles are basically like summary books of other parts of the Old Testament. The theory is that it was scrolls that were discovered in the temple that retold a lot of the other stories found throughout the Old Testament. So it's like another recounting. In Chronicles, and as well as earlier in the Bible, there is the story of David taking the census of all of Israel. He wanted to find out how many people were there. And the act of doing that displeased God. In Chronicles, David tells God when he's trying to plead for no, I'm sorry that I did this. He basically says, the devil made me do it. Oh, Ha-Satan made me do it. I was put to the test and I failed the test. Again, Ha-Satan is not some evil person or evil being. It's this heavenly being that comes to test us. There is no devil in the Old Testament, as I said. There is no hell in the Old Testament. There's references to Sheol, which is the pit, which is where you go and you die. But there's no hell. Fast forward to the Old Testament and you get the temptation of Jesus in the desert. And Satan comes and tempts him and says, no, if you do these things, I will feed you. I will give you all power. I'll give you the world to rule over if you bow down to me. Again, not evil, putting Jesus to the test. It's a different idea when you think about it. You think about Judas, who betrayed Jesus. No, the devil put into his heart to betray Jesus. The devil tested Judas to betray Jesus. Again, nothing evil. It was testing Judas's faith. Somewhere between Old Testament and New Testament, we get a lot of extra biblical texts and Canaanite mythology that revolves around this devil-like being who rules over, hell or the underworld or whatever term you want to use for it. But there is no biblical basis for, this ultimate evil being. We think of, we tend to think of the devil as like the antithesis of God. No, God is all good, the devil is all evil. But when we think about it that way, we're putting the devil on the same level as God, but that's just not true. There is nothing on the same level as God. So how can we think of the devil that way? There's also the belief, and this is what comes from the Canaanite mythologies of, the devil being this fallen angel, or the term light bringer, or morning star, which is where we get the name Lucifer from. That all comes from Canaanite mythology, and so then we tie that in with the story of Saint Michael and all the angels, and Michael with the heavenly battle, beating the devil and casting him down to earth as that falling star that Jesus said he saw. I mean, there's so much there, and we basically take all these. We're taking separate ideas and we're mashing them into one. Now, I'm not saying that we need to follow Satan or we need to give Satan a pass. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying though is that Satan is not who we think he is. Satan tests us. Many people will say, the devil is in your heart, or Satan roams the earth, and that's actually a lot more biblical than thinking about Satan and the devil as the ruler of hell, or as the fallen angel, if you will. It really makes you rethink how we see him. If he is in fact just an angel, an agent of God, well then why would God do that to us? Why would God want to test our faith? Why would God put us through all this bad stuff? I don't know. If we're not to put God to the test, why is God testing us? It's a lot to think about, I know. And I've basically probably confused all of you a lot more than you were going into this episode, and I am too more confused about it, but that's kind of, I'll just continue to learn about it, read about it, and find out more. And I encourage all of you to do the same. Don't take what I say as, you know, the end-all be-all, oh, this is what it is. No. Do your own reading, do your own research. I'm not the expert. I don't claim to be the expert. I'm just telling you what I've learned and what I think. This is one of those points where, you know, if you have questions, if you have ideas, if you have thoughts about this, please reach out to me. We have a Facebook page. Shoot me a message there. Leave a comment. I'd be happy to see what you think about the devil and Satan and all those various mythologies and ideas that have morphed into what we look at today. Who really is the devil? Who really is Satan? Thanks for tuning in. I know this episode was shorter than my episodes usually are, but that's because there's a lot of open-endedness to this topic, and I don't want to bombard you with everything and make you try to change your mind. I'm just giving you something to think about. If you like what you hear, as always, share this with your friends and family. Get this podcast out there. Get what I preach. Get that good news to everyone who needs to hear it. Today necessarily was not necessarily good news, but makes people think. God's peace be with all of you. Have a blessed day.